Hi everyone, today's another dumpster diving story, so let's see what it brings for us today. Mikey didn't pull over because she saw trash. She pulled over because she saw 20 clear plastic totes with the same blue snap lids, stuck like someone had packed their whole life and forgotten the last step. In Florida, near the Space Coast, people move fast, divorces, downsizing, we close on Friday chaos. But this pile looked too neat, too uniform, and Mikey had spent 20 years making a living off on simple rule: the best money never looks like money. She was 58, sharp-eyed, sun tough, and a little addicted to the hunt. Garage sales, curbside cleanouts, estate leftovers. Mikey didn't just resell. She studied brands, screws, logos, old plastics that only existed for a few years. If you put a random box in front of her, she could tell you whether it came from 1994 or 2014, just by the latch shape. She wasn't broke, she wasn't desperate, she was hungry in a different way, the way a fisherman gets when the water suddenly goes still. The street was quiet, the kind of rich neighborhood where the lawns looked calmed, a moving truck had clearly been there. There were a few sad cardboard boxes, a broken lamp, normal stuff, but the Totes were the weird part. No labels, no free sign, just dust and sunlight and those blue lids staring back like a dare. Mikey popped her trunk, did a quick scan for cameras, and started loading. 1 tot, 2, 5, 10. By the time she got to 20, her back was complaining and her grind was getting bigger. Christmas decor, she told herself, old Legos, maybe vintage Barbie, anything was possible, anything was sellable, and if it was junk, worst case, she'd keep the tots. At home, she didn't drag them inside. She lined them up in her garage like a little parade and snapped open the first lid. She froze. No toys, no tinsel, no baby clothes. Inside was a metal model, heavy for its size, with tiny rivets and clean edges like a miniature machine built by someone with the patience and a steady hand. It wasn't a hobby store kit, it was engineered. The second tot held another one, sleeker, different shape. The third tot had a capsule-looking piece with the small markings that made her scalp prickle because she'd seen those shapes before on museum walls, on old NASA photos or grainy documentaries her dad loved. Mikey opened the fourth tot and felt her mouth go dry. These weren't models the way normal people meant models, these were presentation models, the kind used to pitch ideas, the kind that sat on the conference table when money and history were being decided. Who keeps 20 bins of them? And who dumps them at the curb like worn-out towels? She kept opening, hands moving faster now, each tot was a new punch in the chest. Satellites, boosters, odd prototypes that look half familiar and half unreal. Some had tiny breastplates, some had faded inventory stickers. She didn't need to be an astronaut to know this wasn't garage sale clutter. Then she reached the last tot. The one showed under the basket of yellowed kids' towels like someone tried to hide it inside the pile. The lid fought her a little, like it didn't want to come off. When it finally snapped open, Mikey stared down at a lunar model and then at the ink on its base. 5 signature, real names, carefully written, not printed. The kind of names people framed, the kind of names that made collectors go quiet. Mikey sat back on her heels, heart thumping, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't think about profit first. She thought somebody is going to come looking for this. Because you don't throw away a piece of space history by accident, unless you're rushing, hiding, or you have no idea what you're holding. And right then, while she was still staring at those signatures, her phone buzzed. With a notification from the local vintage tag group, someone had already replied to a single photo she posted. 3 words, all caps, "Where did you get it?" Mikey stared at the screen like it was talking back, "Where did you get it?" The comment had already pulled in more replies, some excited, some rude, some way too confident for people who'd only seen one blurry photo. One person wrote, "That's fake." Another wrote, "If it's real, delete this now," and then a private message popped up from an account with no profile picture. "I can be there tonight. Cash, no questions." That's when it hit her. The models weren't just valuable. They were loud. Not physically, socially. The moment she posted, the internet did what it always does. It sniffed blood and started circling. She didn't panic. Mikey wasn't built that way, but she did something smarter than arguing in comments. She deleted the pause, shut the garage door, and pulled the last tot, the one with the signed lunar module, closer to her knees like it might grow legs and walk away. Up close, the signatures weren't Sharpie scribbles. They were old ink, careful strokes, the kind of handwriting you don't fake unless you're a real artist or a real liar. An hour later, her driveway got a visitor. A clean SUV eased up like it belonged there. A man stepped out wearing loafers that had never seen a flea market. He smiled too quickly, like he'd practiced it. "You Mikey?" he asked, already looking past her shoulder toward the garage. "I heard you might have some old space stuff. I buy collections, I make it easy." Mikey didn't invite him in. She stayed in the doorway. "Funny," she said, "because I didn't post my address." He shrugged like that was normal. "Small area, people talk. Look, those are just display models, big and hard to store. I'll take the headache off you. $2,000 for the lot, tonight." $2,000 for 20 bins of metal history? Mikey almost laughed. Instead, she watched his eyes. They flicked over the tot stack, then back to her face, then down again, like he was counting what he'd win if she was dumb. "Come back tomorrow," she said, calm and as iced tea, "if I'm still interested." His smile stayed, but it got colder at the edges. "Tomorrow might be too late," he said, soft. "Stuff like that, people make claims, museums, families, you don't want trouble." Mikey held his gaze. "Then it's a good thing I didn't ask for advice." When he left, she didn't chase him with a phone call, she didn't call a lawyer, she didn't start a whole dramatic process. She did what she always did when someone tried to rush her. She went hunting for facts. And the fact hit her like a wave. One small plaque on a model matched an old contractor name tied to a Space Coast working in the 1960s. Another had a code that showed up in a scan museum program, same style, same font, same kind of presentation piece. She wasn't guessing anymore, she was confirming what her gut already knew. This wasn't craft room junk, this was the kind of collection that ends up behind glass, unless somebody dumps it during a move and never looks back. She called it a specialty auction house that handled aerospaces and space history. The person on the other end didn't scream, they didn't hype, they went quiet in the way professionals go quiet when they are trying not to scare you off. "Ma'am," the woman said gently, "keep everything exactly as it is, please don't clean it, and please don't let anyone help you." That night, Mikey didn't feel fear, she felt focus. Within weeks, the collection went where it belonged, to people who understood what they were looking at. The signed lunar module became the headline piece. When the final number landed, it didn't feel real at first. $155,000 for the whole lot. Mikey didn't buy a mansion. She bought what she'd wanted for years. A clean climate-controlled workshop with tall shelves and space to breathe. She paid in full, hung a simple sign over the door, Mikey's finds, and finally worked without tripping over her own inventory. And on the first day in that new space, she tapped a printed photo to the wall, 20 blue lid, tots lined up in her old garage. Under it, she wrote one sentence just for herself. "Some people throw away history, I don't." That's the story. Well, for me, it's very interesting, very unexpected to find something like that on the dumpsters. So I wonder, what are your thoughts? Please share in the comments. And if you like the video, please give me the thumbs up and subscribe.